Hi friends, welcome to QApedia and this is our blog qapedia.com. Today the topic that we are going to discuss is unit testing, and the subtopics that we will discuss today are unit testing, different levels of testing, what is unit testing, examples of unit testing, and we will see two examples there, and then importance of unit testing, then limitations of unit testing, summary of the session, and then question for the session. So let's start. Now, before we understand unit testing or before talking about unit testing, we need to understand levels of testing. And we have already discussed about levels of testing in our last session. Now, just to give you a summary about levels of testing, we have four different levels of testing, and those levels are unit testing, integration testing, system testing, and UAT, user acceptance testing. So let's understand unit testing now. What is unit testing? Unit testing is a type of software testing where a unit or a component of a software is tested individually or independently. Okay, so we test one unit or one component of the software. Each and every unit of a software should be tested individually in unit testing. Each and every unit should be tested individually. Unit testing is performed by software developers, and any testing which is done by developers is called white box testing. That's why unit testing is a type of white box testing. White box testing is done to test the code of the application. That's and the same way unit testing is also done to test the code of the application. Unit testing is the very first level of testing in software development lifecycle and software testing lifecycle. We have seen that thing, right? This is the very first level of testing. So unit testing is the very first level of testing. Before this, there is no other testing will be performed. And if you want to understand unit testing in details, then let's see one example below. So let's see the example number one, and let's take an example of a car. We know that in a car we have a lots of components like wheels, engine, steering, tire, accelerator, brakes, clutch. There will be a lots of components in a car. All these components or units, we call them units as well. So all these components or units should be tested as a unit individually, and then only they should be installed in the car. So when they will be tested as a unit individually, that type of testing will be called as unit testing. Okay, this is an example of unit testing. Now let's see the example number two. In the second example, let's take an example of a calculator. So let's assume that there is a project to build a calculator application for mobile. So we have to build a calculator application for mobile. So the developers will develop it step by step, or you can say they'll develop it module by module. So first, developer will have to identify all the modules for a calculator, and let's say the different modules or units of the calculator are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So when these units are developed, then the developer will have to test these units independently or individually. So that the developer can do unit testing. So how developer will do the testing, that we are going to see here. Now let's say the programming language that the developer is using is Java. So how developer will do the unit testing, that we are going to see. Okay. Now unit testing will be done on the code of the application. So let's see how developer will do it. First of all, developer will have to write the code for addition. So developer has written a code for addition, method for addition, and here we have two variables which we are passing it here as a parameter, and then we are adding those two integers. Okay, and this add method or addition method is inside this class. Now we have to test this particular method. Is it working fine or not? So we will write one more method, test addition. So this method will test this particular method. Okay, and this method we are writing inside a different class which name is unit test class. Okay, and this method was in unit class. Now this method is going to test this method. So we have to call this method inside this method. Okay, then only we can test it. So if we want to call this method, then we can call this method with the object of this class. So we have to create object of this class. So we have done the same thing. We have created object of unit class. This is the class unit class. For this class, we have to create an object. So for unit class, we have created one object, and with the help of this object, we have called add method, which is here, and we have to pass two parameters. So we have passed two parameters, 2 and 3, and these 2 and 3 will be added, and the addition will be stored here in this result. Now addition of 2 and 3 should be 5. We know that, everybody knows that. So what we will do, if addition of 2 and 3 is 5, then this result value also should be 5. So we will compare this result value to 5, and for comparison we have a method called assert equals. Now this method is coming from JUnit, which is a unit testing tool, and from there this method is coming because the programming language is Java, so we are using JUnit as a unit testing tool. Okay, and then comparison will happen. If suppose result value is also 5, then the result of this particular method will be true. It will be stored here, and if it is returning true value, that means our code is working fine, our unit testing is working fine. Now you might think that why this code and all is coming. So you don't have to worry about it because this unit testing is done by developers. Testers will not do unit testing, so we don't have to worry about this code and all. This is just for your knowledge and learning purpose. So if somebody will ask you about unit testing anything, then this much knowledge is enough, more than enough, if somebody will ask you. So that's how developer will do unit testing. Now, so we can see in above code that developer has written the code for addition functionality in unit class. So we can see in this unit class, code for addition functionality is written. Now developer want to test that the code is working fine or not. Then developer will write a code for testing the addition functionality in unit test class. So in unit test class, developer has written a code for testing the addition functionality. So developer will use JUnit as a unit testing tool because Java is the programming language. Okay, so here we are using JUnit as a unit testing tool because Java is the programming language. Okay, and then we will make sure that the code is working fine. Now here you will say @test is the annotation in JUnit. So @test is the annotation in JUnit for executing the test. If suppose we want to execute this particular test, then @test is the annotation. And assertions, we have used this assertion methods, right? So these assertion methods are for verification. So we are verifying that the result is equal to 5 or not. And this is how a unit testing will be done. Okay, now same way when the developer will have to test the other units such as subtraction, multiplication, division, then developer will have to write the codes for those units in unit class, and then testing code will be written in unit test class. And once unit testing is completed, then integration testing will take place. Now let's see importance of unit testing. Now here are some reasons why unit testing is very important. Early detection of defects. Now, unit testing is the very first level of testing, we know that. So we can find defects at a very early stage of testing. So unit testing helps in finding defects at a very early stage. Then cost effective. Now unit testing helps in finding defects at an early stage. That's why at that time it's very easier and it's very less expensive to fix the defect. Okay, now because unit testing, what do? We test each and every unit individually, so we will easily know that which particular unit is having defect, and then we can fix it very easily. But if suppose we find a defect at the time of system testing, then it's very difficult to find that which particular unit is causing the issue. Then improved code quality. Now unit testing is a type of white box testing, and In unit testing, what do? We test the code of the software. So unit testing helps developers to write better code by testing the functionality of each and every unit. And because of this, our code quality improves and our complexity in the code will reduce. Faster development cycle. Now, because it's very easy to find defects and fix defects in unit testing, so we can say unit testing will speed up our development cycle. And what does it do? It reduces the time that is required for debugging and troubleshooting a defect. Because if we are giving very less time in debugging and troubleshooting the defect, then definitely our development cycle will speed up. Better maintainability. Unit testing helps in maintaining the code in a better way. Whenever developer will write a new code for a new feature, then the developer can do the unit testing, and based on the unit testing results of unit testing, based on that, developer can maintain the code very easily. Like unit testing is getting passed or it is getting failed, based on those results, the maintainability of the code can be done, and it increases the maintainability. Confidence in code changes. Now, all the above benefits that we have seen of unit testing, like early defect detection, cost effectiveness, code quality is better, development cycle is faster, and our maintainability is better. The developer gets some confidence that the new code is not going to break the existing functionality. Any code that the developer is writing is not going to break the existing functionality, and developers can make changes very confidently and more confidently. So if suppose we want to summarize, then we can say that unit testing is very important because it helps in catching defects early, it improves the code quality, speeds up the development cycle, it enhances the maintainability, and then provides some confidence to the developer while doing code changes. Now, limitations of unit testing. So we have seen that importance of unit testing, that unit testing is very important, but there are some limitations as well of unit testing. And here are those limitations. Like first one is coding knowledge is required. So we know that unit testing is a type of white box testing, and white box testing is done on the code of the software application but not on the application. So you will need to have the coding knowledge if you want to perform unit testing. Now, only code related issues can be found in unit testing. So unit testing is done on the code of the application. So we can only find coding related issues. Configuration related issues cannot be found. So unit testing is not done on the application or on the software application. So we cannot find the configuration related issue. Or we can say we cannot find issues which can be found by the end user. And limited scope. Unit testing just test the one unit of a software application, not the complete software application or the two integrated units or more than two integrated units. So unit testing is having very limited scope in testing. Then time and effort. Now, see, whenever we do any type of testing like system testing, unit testing, or any other testing that we do, what do we have to do? We have to write the test scenarios and test cases. But writing test cases and test scenarios for unit testing is very difficult these days because we have to follow agile process, and in agile process we have very limited time for development and testing. So that is the main problem in unit testing. The time and effort will be required. Performance testing. Now, unit testing does not help in performance testing because we can check the performance of a software application only when it is completely developed. So we can see that unit testing is important, but there are some limitations of unit testing, and we have to overcome those limitations. And that's why software is tested at different levels, and we can overcome these limitations in integration testing, system testing, and in UAT. Now let's see the summary of the session. So we have covered below topics in today's session: different levels of testing, what is unit testing, example of unit testing, importance of unit testing, and then limitations of unit testing. And let's see the question for the session today. Explain unit testing with examples and what is the importance of unit testing. So that's it for the session, guys. If you want to get the notes for the session, you can go to Simply Blog and you can find the notes for this particular session. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.